Welcome back to Invisible UX. Today we'll continue our series on Figma tutorials with a session on position and size. Enjoy.
So for this exercise, we're going to only use one shape, one object. We're going to select it. And as we look into the design properties menu, we can see X and Y. So again, if you're familiar with using other design software, you might have encountered this before, but this is simply the X and Y position, X being the horizontal axis, Y being the vertical axis on the frame. Okay, so if I select and hold this object, hold Shift, you don't really need to hold Shift, but if I just drag it all the way to the frame edge, I'm at position 0. So this is 0 pixels from the left edge of the frame. The Y-axis is measured from the top of the frame. So if I drag this shape all the way to the top, we can see that the Y-axis is 0 because I'm right on that line, right, all the way at the top. Now we can see that as I'm moving it left and right, the Y-axis stays 0, but the X changes. That's because I'm getting further away from and closer to the X-axis, which is all the way on the left here. Okay, that's simple positioning and relative positioning. The next row is W and H for width and height. Now this simply refers to the width and height of the object that's selected. So I have a couple options here to change the size. I can drag any of the 4 sides. I can drag any of the 4 corners and change both width and height. I can hover over width, hold, and then scroll left and right. I can hover over height, hold, scroll left and right. Now, did you notice anything interesting as I hovered and scrolled left and right there? Both the width and height changed at the same time. It wasn't just one or the other. That's because I have my constraints button selected, right? So this locks the ratio between width and height. So if I have, for example, 30, I'll unlock this temporarily, and 40, so a 3:4 ratio, and I lock the constraints, if I type in 300, what's it going to be? 400, right? It's going to be way too big for that frame. Okay, so with the constraints locked, I can still drag each side independently and override that constraints, because the constraints only applies to what you type in or what you hover over here. So if you actually drag any of the sides, any of the corners of the shape itself, you can override that, okay? If I unlock, this is meant to be a lock or a link, right? So if I unlock it, now I can hover, only the width changes, only the height changes. Okay? We'll go ahead and lock that constraints. So moving down, we have the rotation factor. So there's, again, several ways you can rotate an object. If you hover over any of the corners, you get the rotate symbol. If you press and hold and then rotate, you can rotate freely. I'll hit Command Z for undo. If you hover, press and hold, and also hold down Shift, it's going to lock you in on certain angular increments. So in this case, it's 15 degrees. Okay, so that's a more direct way to rotate an object. You can also, similar to width and height, and we didn't go over it, but similar to the X and Y position, hover over the angle, press and hold, and then get kind of like a free rotation.